Welcome to the College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line. Here's Shehan Jeyarajah and Bobak Hayeri.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the College Football Survivor Show, brought to you by Buyout Money, where we go deep into this season's contenders for the college football playoff. I'm Bobak Hayeri, and I'm joined, as always, by Shehan Jeyarajah, national college football writer for CBS Sports. You can find us on X at CFB Survivor Show, where you can participate in our polls, send us feedback. We always appreciate it when you take a moment to let us know there, or like, rate, and subscribe our show wherever you find it. And reviews on places like Apple and wherever you get your podcasts always help folks find us. Well, we had the final week of the regular season, and while the game was close, everyone else won. So ain't that just ducky? I wanted one thing I read this weekend, and I do on my spare time help run the college football subreddit on Reddit. I read a comment that I thought summarized this week and what it's like almost year after year. And I'm going to credit, I guess, Home Free 122, an Oklahoma fan. It ain't a championship run season if you don't have a near-death experience with your in-state rival. And I think we saw that several times this past week. But Shehan, how are you? How did you think this weekend went?
This has been the weirdest season that I can remember because we have had so many close calls. Well, we nearly had Alabama lose to South Florida this year. We had 4th and 31. We've had so many close calls this year, and nobody's losing. Every single one of these teams is surviving. Washington won on a game-winning walk-off field goal against Washington State. I don't understand how it's even possible to have this many favorites win. But this weekend got the juices flowing. This was a fun weekend. Everybody looked vulnerable. Nobody looked very good. I will say too, right? So obviously, and we have a lot of legacy Northern listeners, of course. Like, the game is great. The game is fantastic. It's one of the biggest, best football games that obviously college football has, and it lived up to it in every single way. 30-24, obviously going Michigan's way. But the Iron Bowl is so good. The Iron Bowl has a level of chaos for two high-profile teams that the game just never really has. It's all the game is always a very high pressure type football game, and the Iron Bowl is you can return a missed field goal out of the end zone. You don't have to spy a quarterback when he has to go 31 yards on one play. It's crazy. I cannot believe it. Somebody did point out two of the most high profile and longest 4th down conversions that we've ever seen are 4th and 31, Auburn against Alabama, and 4th and 25, Arkansas over Ole Miss back in 2015. Both of those teams coached by Hugh Freeze.
Oh, man. I did not realize that. But you're absolutely right. The Iron Bowl is just pure YOLO chaos, however you want to put it. While, Michigan and Ohio State, it feels like serious people having a serious football game when they have a football game. It's just everyone's bringing their A game. They're trying to be professionals. They go in and someone wins, someone loses. Especially when it's in Jordan-Hare, the Iron Bowl is just let's put all reason aside. Let's play with just madness. And for pure entertainment, I think, a neutral fan who isn't necessarily as into the X's and O's would just love that more. And I agree with that. I love both. I love all tastes and all varieties of college football, but I think that's a great observation. I 100% agree with you there. Oh my goodness. And it's interesting too, because by the way, I just want to say it's so funny, that 4th down call. I still can't get over the decision to put a spy on Jalen Milroe. He was going to scramble for 31 yards on 4th down. I mean, it reminds me, they should have running jokes. They should have that spy is still out there today waiting for Jalen Milroe to break off that attempted run. It reminds me of, actually, one of the better jokes I read about this is the city of Tuscaloosa should have an honorary day of the, they should change just their calendar to have an April 31st, to have a 4/31. Just for this next year. I don't know, just skip May 1st, actually add that 31st day. So 4/31 can be a Tuscaloosa holiday. I think they should absolutely do that, because that would totally, I think, fit into that kind of hilarious, sort of not pettiness, wackiness that you see in that sort of a rivalry game. But my goodness, I mean, and it's so interesting too with these kinds of close wins, because obviously Washington squeaked by as well. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how the playoff committee will eventually kind of look at these and kind of compare them, because what we see on the field, I mean, arguably Florida State also, I mean, they had a rally from behind. How they're going to have to weigh all of these things. And are they going to look at the team in the past, or are we going to look at the team that's going to be on the field? There's going to be a lot of those questions for the committee, especially as we see their rankings on Tuesday night.
No, it's a great question. And, the other piece too, obviously, Florida State playing in their first game without their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis, didn't look all that impressive against a pretty bad Florida team that, by the way, missed a bowl for the first time since 2014, but that's not part of our discussion. Tate Rodemaker, of course, into the starting lineup. Not the greatest, 12 of 25 for 134 yards. I am curious, because if Florida State wins against Louisville, who, by the way, also lost in a crazy game to set off a crazy Mark Stoops Texas A&M adventure that didn't come to fruition, but like Florida State at 13-0 has to be in, right? But I don't think anybody's going to feel very good about it.
Yeah, it's a really awkward situation, because if you're looking at the team that's going to be on the field in the playoff, if they're looking fresh, it's hard to look at this program and say, oh yeah, I could totally. I don't know who they would be favored against in the top 8 right now. It would be difficult for me to find that team. And I mean, again, I'm not, that Florida State Florida game, Florida sabotaged itself several times. I mean, I've heard it called the spit and quit, the swamp spit, because suddenly a freshman defensive lineman gets ejected for spitting in the second quarter at a Florida State guard. And they went on the Noles went on a 24-3, tear afterwards. So, and then Florida had another boneheaded play where there was like that dual targeting where 2 of the players took out Rodemaker, and Rodemaker again, like, it's a tough environment. It's the swamp, so I'll give him that credit. But finishing 48% of your passes, he made a key 4th down conversion. So, and at one point it looked like he was knocked out of the game. So, I mean, luckily, thankfully, he was okay. He only missed a little bit of it, but their running game was able to keep them in it. Trey Benson ran for 3 touchdowns. He had 95 yards and 19 carries. He had a 26-yarder in the 3rd down with less than 3 minutes to play that kept them in the game and helped seal that victory. But at the same time, 18 consecutive wins. You have to acknowledge that because we're talking about what even Georgia was having its weakest weeks of this season. Everyone was like, well, yeah, but Georgia, you can't deny the fact that they're on this crazy run, the best in the SEC so far. But the defense for Florida weathered a storm. They were able to keep them in the game. It helped that, again, the Gators had that backup quarterback, Max Brown, and he wasn't that great. So once again, I mean, they had a game-sealing interception because you have a backup quarterback who is struggling against a solid defense. So it's so hard. It's so hard to read this team. I mean, and all credit to Norvell and his staff, because they kept the Noles focused. They kept them in the game, and they were able to rally. And that, I think, that's the part that I guess I'm most impressed by. They were able to rally and win when things started to look pretty bad. Especially, there were so many things they could have, the team could have internalized to let that game get out from under them. But they managed to do it. But as you said, it's Florida. I can't tell what to make of this team. I mean, I think we'll see if Napier is even the head coach by the end of next season. But again, we're not really in. This isn't the Florida. We're not talking Florida because they're obviously not a playoff contender. But that does weigh into where would you put Florida State? Who would you ever favor them against? And I can't wait to see where they get weighed. And even though Washington had a close win, I can't see Florida State even challenging them for that 3rd spot.
No, definitely not. I do think that we are bearing the lead a little bit. It's time to vote out a team, and we are going to go straight to the polls. We put all of our 1-loss teams in our poll: Alabama, Oregon, Texas, and the lucky winner, Ohio State, with 44% of the vote, is out of the college football playoff conversation. And I think we have to talk about the game. Obviously,
yes,
a very competitive game. 30-24 win for Michigan. A 3rd straight The last time that Michigan won 3 straight was when they won a national championship. By the way, their only national championship since the Korean War. That's not what you want to see if you're Ohio State. Uh, Ryan Day obviously is now 56-7 as a head coach, with 3 of those losses coming against Michigan. His only win against Michigan came back in 2019 because they didn't play the game in 2020. That is not what you want to see if you're Ohio State.
He's also now lost to Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore. But the and the thing is, like, credit to Michigan. Last week was their 1,000th victory. I should say the week before against Maryland, but their 1,001th victory was one for the ages. And this time, Michigan didn't really steal signals. They just stole Ohio State's thunder, because both of us, and I know I was completely bullish on the fact that I thought Trayvon Henderson was going to be a key to the game. He was going to help open it up, and watch what happens. It'll give Kyle McCord an opportunity to just get the game going, and we'll see if JJ McCarthy is shaky. And man, I cannot check off how many mistakes I made, how many assumptions I made. I honestly, on a lighter note, I thought, Harbaugh should have been on standby to be para-dropped into the big house after the win, just kind of fall into that big crowd that appeared on the field in the big house. But I mean, how much of it, and it's funny watching that game, how much of it was Ryan Day's conservative play calling? How many of it were the key interceptions by Kyle McCord? The only turnovers in the game, but the turnover battle is key in a game like this. And I know last week I mentioned Ohio State's special teams were a weak point, and they weren't able to deliver on a field goal. But of course, you could say that was a long field goal, and part of the reason they were put in that position in the second quarter was because of Ryan Day's conservative play calling. So I'm trying to figure out if Ohio State was outbullied or outmanaged by Michigan in that game. There's so many questions I have to try and analyze it, but ultimately, at least just taking a quick, going back to the whole reason why they shouldn't necessarily be a playoff contender right now. With everyone else winning out, they're now in the Louisville position. They need mad chaos for any hope to get into this playoff. And with the way teams are playing, the odds of that seem awfully low. And we're going to dive deeper into these conference title games a little bit later. But I think, again, it was interesting to watch. Michigan last year was more on big plays. This year it was more methodical. I think Michigan really stepped up. And one last point I want to make. JJ McCarthy, I was concerned about his play. He had a terrible game against Maryland. But I was listening to sort of what people were observing of him before the game this year. And it made sense. He's comfortable against Ohio State. He went into the shoe last year and beat them. This year, he's healthier. He's in the big house. It's a very friendly audience. I mean, it was striking to see how few Ohio State fans could get tickets to that game. And he just went out there and did what needed to be done, did what was asked for him. And that was a thought I had. We were talking about the game last week. Will we have a player who sees the game and steps up? That's like their moment to shine. And JJ McCarthy, I'm not going to say it was like a Heisman winning performance, but he did what was needed. And that helped Michigan win this game.
Absolutely. I think that what's frustrating for Ohio State is in football, we so often get caught in these traps of talking about it in the dumbest ways, right? We're just like, well, this team wanted it more. This team was tougher. But like, Ryan Day coaches scared. Ryan Day coaches scared against Michigan. You saw it, like you mentioned, at the end of the first half. They have 4th and 2 at the middle of the field. They have a 52-yard field goal that they're setting up, which is a really long field goal, even in the NFL. That's not a kick that's automatic by any means. And they had 39 full seconds left on the clock when they decided to let the clock run down and take a timeout and kick a long field goal that they missed. That is cowardice. That is straight up cowardice. There's no way around that. One of the biggest keys, especially in the first half of the game, Ohio State, I believe, was outgaining Michigan by about 80 yards in the first half. But Michigan had 3 fourth down conversions. Ohio State didn't even attempt one. That's cowardice. Michigan is playing to win the game. Ohio State is playing to not lose the game. You saw, I think that there were some clips circling from before the game where Kyle McCord was like, don't make mistakes to like Ohio State's players. That was like their focus heading into the game. He threw an interception early, and he immediately seemed to realize I made a mistake and played scared after that. And you can't play like that in this kind of game. you have to go out there and try to be the better team. Michigan. One other point that I saw somebody make was Ohio State in so many ways played to win last year's version of this game. Michigan played to play a step ahead, to try to not just replicate last year, but to be one step ahead of everybody else. Whether it was obviously, like I said, the going for it on fourth down, whether it was the running back pass, right, like the Donovan Edwards pass that went for a big gain, that was a huge play in the game. So they very much tried to continue to think ahead. Ryan Day and his staff tried to look behind, and it ultimately cost them. And we don't have to spend too much more time on this game, but the reality is, it is so much worse for the reason that Ohio State lost the game to be that they were bad on offense. That is just not acceptable when your head coach is Ryan Day. That is what you are there for. If your defense is playing well and your offense sucks, then what are you doing here? What is the point of you being here? Because I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. Ohio State, to me, is the best job in the country. To me, it recruits itself. To me, you could put almost any coach in that job and win 10 games a year because of the advantages that it has versus the rest of the Big Ten. Now, obviously, things will change up a little bit with 4 new teams coming in, but being 56-7 isn't that impressive to me when you lose every game that matters. He's 1-6 against top 5 opponents.
You've got me thinking. It's like, so it's slightly better than Penn State. It's like Penn State's the same story, but you can't also beat Ohio State. And it's interesting too. I agree totally with the conservative play calling, and I playing scared, but also it's almost like they completely bought into JJ McCarthy's just not doing well and decided to focus entirely on a field position game, counting on the sputtering offense on the other side, which and part of it's Sharon Moore. We're a little concerned heading into this game. Like, yeah, he ran it like 32 times against Penn State. That was a cute idea, but was it really was that a wise coaching decision, or are we going to, and then the Maryland game got me a little more concerned, but part of me is like, well, he was hiding stuff because they got creative. As you pointed out, they went 3-3 on fourth down, but bringing up backup quarterback Alex Orji as a run threat that got him at least, got that 20-yard run that gave the offense something different. And as you mentioned, Donovan Edwards had that 34-yard pass that set up a critical field goal. I think all of that willingness to okay, because the whole season we were kind of like, Michigan seems to be playing conservative against every team they're playing, and they're all weak and they know they're weak. So they're kind of hiding stuff. What will they show up against Penn State? Ends up they didn't really try anything crazy against Penn State. Instead, we saw a very unusual decision to just run it. And then when it came down to it, why are you going to hide stuff? It is the game. This is what the whole season. And while Michigan certainly has this whole season had their eyes beyond the game, you don't hide things. This is Ohio State. This is a top 3 team. You've got to if you're going to do it, you got to lay it out on the line. And they did. And it's just striking to me. Then again, the focus of this team is what strikes me with Michigan, because we've talked about they've kept the outside noise out, and that outside noise has faded a bit, and this win certainly has pushed it further in the background. But just on the field stuff, Will Johnson had a key interception early on. Impressive. Then he gets injured, and the team managed to rally and keep Marvin Harrison and the rest, and Cade Stover, who also had a good game, by the way. But they were able to keep them enough in check. And then when you had that unfortunate season-ending injury to the offensive lineman, his name just slipped my head.
Zach Zenitz. Yes. Or Zinter. Zach Zinter.
Zinter, yeah.
Sorry. Zenitz is my new colleague.
and it's a brutal injury, and it could be really demoralizing. What happens the very next play? Blake Corum runs for a touchdown. So again, that kind of ability to stay focused, to stay on task, that was something where I was utterly impressed, which again, I think I give massive credit to Michigan's coaching staff to keep this team focused with all the distractions out there. And yeah, they were professionals and they won the game. It kind of goes to what we were talking about. This is a game of professional against professional. People bring their A game. And that's, I think, probably the worst part for Ohio State fans. It's hard you can't say Michigan did any chickeration. There wasn't a big play. They just beat them.
It's bizarre. It's not what you expected to see. But with that, Ohio State, you are out of here. We're down to Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Alabama, and Texas. Obviously, Louisville proved us right for kicking them out last week, losing a 7-point game against their rival
Oof.
Kentucky. But I think this is about right. I think that really and truly, these are the 7 teams that can make the college football playoff.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing, again, how they weigh these close wins, especially with Washington and Florida State. And Alabama, again, close win. Granted, I can totally imagine how it's going to be said. Well, it was against Oregon. Well, it was against a rival. You can always tell like they're defending something. And I'm not saying Alabama isn't terrifying. And I think I'm very curious to see. I think they have a reasonable shot to upset Georgia. But looking at the rest of the teams, I mean, Oregon seems to be like the most complete team right now heading into championship weekend, the most confident team. Barely lose on the road to Washington. I could see them winning the same rematch in a neutral site game. While Texas, for example, they lost their game in a neutral site game to a rival Oklahoma that isn't nearly as strong as Washington right now. So it's going to be fun to watch the dynamics as they balance them all. But at least at this state, coming out of this past week, I give Oregon an edge as the most impressive team so far. I'm not saying they're my number one, but I'm saying of the championship contenders. Texas, yeah, they had a dominating win, but Texas Tech ain't the same as Oregon State has been this season. And Texas, again, we saw some weakness on their side that got hidden because they blew out Texas Tech. They still their first 5 trips to the red zone, they only scored once. And a couple of long touchdowns in between, kind of like that's where it kind of fuzzes that out. That might not have been as apparent, but I'm curious to see how this all works out. So next, let's have a conversation about some of these conference championship games that are coming up.
The College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line.
The first conference championship game I think we should talk about is the Pac-12. It's really exciting. It's the one that's coming up first on Friday, Legion Stadium. Beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. It's actually going to be back to back with the Mountain West, just by sheer coincidence. But we'll set that aside. But we've got Washington, we've got Oregon, the rematch that a lot of people have been expecting. I think ever since they played the first time, and we had a few games like that around the country, but this one really did end up the rematch we all expected. And it feels like the teams are very different than what we saw in that game, or at least some of the perceptions that came out of their first game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Oregon is a 9.5-point favorite heading into this game against a team that beat them earlier this year. So I do feel like people have moved off of Washington a little too quickly. So, I mean, they were so good early in the year. I mean, they were scary good earlier in the year with the way that they were able to put up points, with the level that Michael Penix Jr. was playing at, with the stats that they were putting up. I mean, they scored 59 against Cal, 41 against Michigan State. And it hasn't looked like that the past few weeks. That's fair to say. 3-point win over Washington State, 2 points against Oregon State, 7 points against Utah, 10 against USC. But I do think that they're undervalued right now because, one, they found ways to win games. They've won, I believe they're up to 19 in a row, the second longest winning streak in all of college football, only trailing Georgia. And the teams that they've played over that time period, it's impressive. They beat Oregon twice over that period, both with Bo Nix and Dan Lanning. They've beaten Oregon State twice. They beat Texas in the Alamo Bowl last year with, by the way, Quinn Ewers in the lineup. Like, they have played good teams. They beat Arizona on the road, a win I think that only has aged better with the way that Arizona's played the last little while. So I think that Washington is being talked about as, I don't know what you want to compare to, right? Like the sort of explosive offense type team, like more of like an Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley type team. And I think that they're just more complete than that. I think that this has been a team that's played really good situational defense when they've needed to. I think that they've run the ball when they've needed to. I think they've protected Michael Penix Jr. pretty well. And obviously, you don't have to have any questions about that passing game. That passing game is elite. Now, Oregon, I think, is certainly a more well-rounded team than Washington. And the level that they're playing at right now on defense is obviously notable. They've been dominating their matchups. They're running the ball at a high level, and Bo Nix has taken that leap. Now, I think the question becomes, when these two teams played before, obviously Bo Nix had a good game, but Michael Penix Jr. was a trump card. Like the passing game that Washington had in their last matchup is the reason they won the game. Flat out, straight up. Now you head into this game. This is obviously going to be a different kind of test for both Oregon and Washington to come in and do this. And by the way, do this on a neutral field. And also something that I think will be relevant, doing this in a dome in Las Vegas, not having to do it in the elements of Oregon and Washington, which I think has also been a factor. I'm definitely picking Washington to cover. There's no doubt about that. They're like 9.5 is crazy to me. I think I probably lean Oregon to win straight up. I don't think that Washington has played its absolute best football as of late, but I think this ends up being something like a 35-31 game. A really, really competitive game that once again comes down to the end.
That I definitely agree. It's probably going to be close with an Oregon edge, but the thing that's got me about this is the way Washington, and I think you absolutely nailed it when you said Washington just seems to find ways to win. And this pulling a rabbit out of your hat style of victory, we've seen championship runs by teams that have done that. Certainly. Sometimes they end brutally in the playoff, but we've certainly seen programs that can do that. I mean, the game winning or the game deciding play that everyone keeps talking about is that wild decision on a fourth down in their own territory to roll the dice and have Penix just do a fake handoff and then another handoff to Odunze, who ran around the corner and got that key fourth down play. And part of it, again, I remember Odunze, I was reading a quote from him, got to give kudos to the offensive staff to believing in us on that. But I was thinking to myself, what if it didn't go well? What if that play got stopped and suddenly tie ball game, you hand Wazoo the ball in your own territory? Would we be talking about it? Because I went back to the Oregon game. I'm like, everyone was on Dan Lanning for being too aggressive. Like, oh, you went for it on first down and you cost him the game. And then I remember even in that game, people were like, if Dan Lanning had been successful on one of those key fourth downs, no one would have said that. Everyone would have been like, wow, he's bold, he's aggressive. And now we're seeing that team, the two teams since that game. And Oregon, again, in my opinion, is the most complete team in terms of performance. And Washington just keeps doing these wild plays. So they're the ones that almost seem the one tempting fate game after game after game. And when you tempt fate, I'm always concerned about the game where you go against the team that doesn't need to tempt fate. And Oregon just keeps getting stronger. It reminds me, and again, this is why I'm so excited for the 12-team playoff, because it reminds me of some of those Pete Carroll teams that would drop a game early in the season. By the end of the year, no one wanted to face them. So Oregon kind of reminds me of that, except that was a really tight game against an excellent team at their house. And now that's an edge I'm going to give them because again, but Washington, again, the defense did well enough. They managed to get 3 interceptions on Cameron Ward, who's a legit quarterback. Very curious to see if he's still at Wazoo next year, but we'll set that aside. I think Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach, and I think he's keeping that team focused and able to stay in those games. But Dan Lanning, they're just a tough team. Oregon State is a tough opponent. You have to play tough football to beat them. We're going to say, I'm going to do the obligatory. Bo Nix definitely affirmed it's him and Jayden Daniels as a Heisman finalist. I mean, that, went 33 for 40, 367 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus another touchdown on the ground. He has great receivers. Troy Franklin caught 9 passes. Tez Johnson caught 11 passes. Their defense, though, in my opinion, this is where it's going to come down to. The Oregon defense has been underrated overall because everyone wants to focus on Bo Nix. And, and those who know the running game also know that Oregon's Bucky is a great running back as well. But Oregon State only was able to convert 3 of 11 third downs against the Ducks. They were only able to get 53 on the ground. And when you look at them nationally, they improved all their defensive statistics against a tough team. They were able to they're now number 7 in scoring defense, number 7 in rushing defense in the nation, total defense number 15. So they're allowing like 15 points, maybe 300 yards of total offense. Though Washington's potential edge is their weak spot is still the passing defense, where they rank about 48th. So maybe if Penix can have, probably too late to be a Heisman moment, but if he can really deliver that passing game, that will be their edge. But overall, I just think this defense and this consistent play on both sides of the ball by Oregon is going to give them that edge. I don't see any reason why it's going to let down because I thought they delivered it the first time they played. So I don't see a reason. And I mean, the cliche, let's go to the cliche thing. It's hard to beat the team twice in the same season, right? Fine. We'll see how Liberty does against New Mexico State. But I think here, I think Oregon is just a stronger team. And without the home field advantage, that's going to assert itself completely. And I think Oregon's going to win, but I think it not only straight up, but I could see them getting that 9 points. But at the same time, I feel weird. I think it's a rivalry game. I think Washington is going to keep it closer than that. But if it's 7 points, I wouldn't be surprised.
I do want to push back on one thing. I think that, to me, the winner of the Heisman Trophy is going to be decided in this game. I think that both of these teams are very quarterback-centric. Obviously, look, Bo Nix has been wildly more efficient. If you go look, though, at his advanced metrics, I mean, his average depth of target is 7 yards per attempt. Michael Penix is at 11.5. They're not being asked to do the same things, and they're also not doing the same things. Michael Penix Jr., still number 2 in the nation in total passing yards, still number 4 in total touchdowns. Like, he is still doing the thing, and most people nationally have not watched him play since that Oregon game. They're just looking at box scores. They're not actually watching the games. This is a game that they're going to watch. And I think that the winner of this game, this is a playoff play-in game. I think that we can say that definitely. With an 11-1 Oregon versus a 12-0 Washington, the winner of this, the Pac-12, congratulations in your final year, heading back to the playoff for the first time since 2016. But I think that also whoever outduels, and again, we obviously with the caveat that they have to have that kind of game, right? Like they have to have a 300-yard, 2-touchdown game at least to do it. But I think that this game will decide the Heisman because, look, God bless Jaden Daniels. He's had an incredible season. LSU hasn't won a meaningful game all year. Like, the only reason that they're in this is because their defense is so bad. Because they're just like, well, what's he supposed to do? He only plays at LSU with the 2 best receivers in the country. Like, come on. To me, that's just not all that compelling. We can have a Heisman conversation maybe on next week's show. We'll obviously be able to do that. You know, maybe next week we'll kind of do a first look at the playoff games, and then the second one we can do a Heisman show. But I think Michael Penix is very much still in it. With that said, let's move on to the Big Ten.
Oh my goodness. So, well, we've known it's Iowa for longer than we've known it's Michigan, but I think a lot of people are going to watch just for pure entertainment, and we can thank Iowa for that. If it had been anybody else in the Big Ten West, I think this would have been one of the least watched conference championship games. But everyone wants to see, how will Iowa's defense mess with Michigan? Will JJ McCarthy somehow, get stuck in a morass? Will it end up being a 10-7 or even better, like 10-8 somehow Michigan victory? Or I think that's going to be it. If Iowa's defense can play to the just really ridiculous level it does, then maybe they could have a puncher's chance. But I am reaching here. I am reaching to give the Hawkeyes a chance. I think Michigan, especially with the confidence that they build off of that Ohio State victory, where it vindicated so much for the program. It got a lot of attention off of the off the field Spygate stuff. It really was able to focus like, look, this is a consistent program. And yeah, they suffered a few injuries, but I think the bulk of that program is there. I don't think Iowa, because we can't forget Iowa's game against Penn State. You don't get shut out that badly by Penn State and suddenly make me convinced that you're going to have all that better of a performance, especially with the injuries Iowa suffered against that Michigan offense. So I think Michigan's going to carry this one pretty handily, but I think a lot of people are going to be watching that first quarter or so, at least on the corner of their eye, just to see if Iowa keeps it interesting.
Yeah, what else? I don't know. Will people watch this over Delaware, Montana, or over Southern Illinois at Idaho? Those sound like way better games than this is going to be. The last time that Iowa played in the conference championship game was 2021. And that team lost to Michigan 42-3. It was not close. I don't see the vision. Again, like you said, they played a Penn State team that is worse than this Michigan team and got beat 31-0. It was not close. Now, I do think that Iowa's defense is going to have a little something for Michigan. I don't think that this is an elite Michigan offense. I don't think it's one of the better units that they've had. but it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good. It's obviously better than that the Penn State team that Iowa got blasted against earlier this year. Iowa is one of the most fascinating teams that's ever come through college football. They rank last place nationally in total offense, and they won 10 games. Now, I will say, part of that is the Big Ten West is it the worst division
Awful.
we've ever seen? I think it's probably the single worst division we've ever seen. It is so bad. It is so embarrassing. Like, the Big Ten West is looking up like, man, maybe someday we can be the ACC Coastal. Like, maybe someday we can reach that level. It won't, but
it's a swan song for them, though. This is it. This is the finale. They're gone. This is how we get to remember them by the Iowa team that managed to climb out of it.
Imagine when Northwestern and Nebraska and Minnesota have to play Oregon instead of each other. That is going to be different. Like you said, I mean, this Iowa team got blasted 31-0 against Penn State earlier this year, and after that game, suffered a bunch of injuries. Cade McNamara got hurt during that game. Eric All went out against Wisconsin. They have been so hurt. They've lost so many tight ends. Let me ask you this: how? I don't even. What is the closest score that you could imagine if everything goes perfectly Iowa's way?
Well, it would have to. That's the thing. You have to start with the score possible for Iowa. You
Yes.
can't start with Michigan. You have to start with what Iowa's even capable of. Because, side note, the whole running gag this whole season, which Brian Ferentz the race for 325 or whatever, he would have to score 67 points against Michigan to somehow keep in that zone. People love calculating that, even though he's being let go at the end of the season. But realistically, I think Iowa could score on a great day 13 points. I mean, is that what it feels like, especially against that kind of a defense? So it would end up being a game where Iowa scores 10-13. Maybe Michigan has a really bad day, throwing interceptions or something that gives them a little bit of an edge. And it would be like a 1 or 2 point game. Like, I could not conceive of any other way. Michigan would just have to have the worst day of offense ever, and they have a solid defense. So it would end up being one of these defensive battles. It would end up being the game that Ryan Day hoped to have against Michigan somehow. And then we'd get some really just lumbering game that ends 13-10 with everyone just shocked. Like, it would have been the most frustrating game to watch because everyone would, even neutral fans would be, well, when's Michigan going to score? Well, when's Michigan going to score? And it just wouldn't happen. And I've witnessed a few games like that in my lifetime where you're sitting there the whole time, the game ends like 10-6 with teams that aren't Iowa. And you're just kind of like, how is no one scoring right now? How are we in the fourth quarter still? It could be one of those. But credibly, that's my biggest stretch.
So I think I will say one thing to factor in. I think that, again, to be clear, nowhere near enough to win the game. I think that Cooper DeJean being in the lineup would have changed potentially Iowa's scoring upside, because I think that maybe you have a special teams touchdown, maybe you have a defensive touchdown. I don't know if they're as capable of that without him in the lineup. I mean, he's a first team All-American. He's a really good player, and he won't be playing in this game. I think that for me, the biggest number that I can imagine Iowa getting to is 5. Like a 1 field goal and 1 safety. I don't think I can imagine any more than that. That's the thing. I think that best case scenario, this is a 10-5 Iowa loss. Like, that is like the perfect, like, everything goes exactly to plan kind of game. I think that that's what they're capable of, and the field goal would come on an interception, like, within the red zone. Like, that's what it would have to be. I think that this Iowa team is a joke. I think they're going to get... I don't even think that it's fair to say that they'll get totally exposed, because I don't think that anybody thinks that they're anything other than this. But in this game, I'm more going to be interested in, like, matchups. Like, I'm more going to be interested in, okay, how does Michigan's offensive line handle the defensive line of Iowa? How does JJ McCarthy handle the secondary? But, like, the points will be irrelevant. Like they'll be completely irrelevant. I'll tell you what, it's exactly like this, right? Obviously, Baylor's been really bad this year, my alma mater. So I've just been like watching games, like, all right, defense, just let them score, hand the ball back over to the offense, so I can see like what Blake Shapen can do. That's what it feels like. Where it's like the numbers are just irrelevant. Like I just more want to be like, I think the Shapen's doing some nice things. Who, by the way, is transferring, but it's more that I just want to see like, oh, can they get certain playmakers involved? Because I don't like the game is over. It's not a real football game. Like they're gonna lose 44-7. Like, but I just kind of want to like see.
Iowa's the best defensive scout team they're ever going to play, is what it sounds like. Let's try some things against this defense. Offensive, there's but let's try some stuff.
Is basically watching this game will be like you remember back with the NFL Pro Bowl, they used to do like skills competitions. Like that's more what I'm going to be watching this game for than any real thing. And by the way, I will say, I felt that way last year too when they played Purdue. I actually did feel like I learned things from that game because I actually ended up picking TCU to beat Michigan based off of some of the holes that I saw in that game. So I don't think that we won't learn anything from this game. I just think that it's going to be more of a game within the game. If I to pick a final score, I'm going to go something like 27-3.
I frankly wouldn't be surprised if it's like 35-3 or 35-2. No, I'll do 35-2. Let's make it a really
35-4.
Maybe they'll get a scoregami of some kind and create a score that's just never been seen before in college football. Those are always fun. And if any team can get that kind of an odd scoring total, it'll be facing Iowa. But let's wrap up this kind of first group by talking about the ACC title game. So Louisville, I get it's Kentucky. I get it's a rivalry. You kind of let us down a little bit, but I'm not as, it definitely seems like it's going to be a closer game, if only because of Florida State with a backup quarterback. We've talked about them already in this show. What do you think? How does this matchup break down for you?
It's a tough one. Without Jordan Travis in the lineup, I think it's a lot less certain. I still lean Florida State in this game, but certainly by a lot less than I would have with him out of the lineup. You look at this game right now, the line is only 2.5 in favor of Florida State. I think that's probably about right. Louisville's been playing really good defense. I think that they're going to be a tough test for Tate Rodemaker. Now, Tate's also now gone through a week of practice. He's gone through a rivalry game. He's gone through some moments. I do think that's going to end up helping him out. I kind of want to see Brock Glenn play a little bit. He's a freshman who they're really excited about, but that probably won't happen unless things are going real bad. I do think that this is going to be a big moment for this Florida State defense, though, because they have been the unheralded strength of this group. 15 points allowed against Florida last week. They haven't allowed 25 points. They've only allowed 25 points once this year, and that was in kind of a letdown spot before the Clemson game against Boston College, who ended up not looking as bad as we thought that they might be. Yeah. So I think that,
and they were doing the red bandana game when BC again. If this, I've said before, if it's NCAA football, when they redo it, BC should get like a skills boost when they declare one game a season the red bandana game, because that would be totally accurate. I've witnessed it in person. I've seen a major upset in Boston, in the stadium in Chestnut Hill, and watch them storm the field afterwards. Man, but anyway, sorry, setting that aside.
No, so I think that this Florida State defense is really good. I think that they're gonna be able to contain Louisville. I think that they're gonna be able to contain obviously Jack Plummer and Jawar Johnson. I think that the offense for Florida State could be a little bit of a slog, but I think they'll have enough. I think that for Florida State, what this game has to look like is definitely avoiding mistakes, which they did against Florida. They did avoid mistakes. It's capitalizing on moments like they did against Florida. And I think that they need to let Tate Rodemaker kind of air it out a little bit just to get him comfortable. This is a kid who's been on campus for 4 years at this point and really hasn't played very much football at all. I think that you need to test him in situations. You need to get him comfortable. Obviously lean on that running game like they did last week against Florida. I think that's going to be really important for them as well. But just don't make the game too hard. And for Louisville, it's the opposite, right? You want to make the game hard. You have a really experienced quarterback. I think that The uglier the game gets, I think the better that you feel. When you look at, again, Louisville's running game has been a huge strength for this team. Jawar Jordan over 1,000 yards this season. They've also got a 600-yard rusher. So, like, if you can hold on to the ball, if you can muck up the game, if you can try to bait Tate Rodemaker into mistakes, that's what success looks like for you. And again, I mean, Jack Plummer has been a good enough player this year. He hasn't made mistakes. And I think that if you, again, muck up the game, Louisville is a much more poised team at quarterback, especially with obviously Jack Plummer in the game, than I think that Tate Rodemaker is going to be. I think Florida State wins. I think it's a low-scoring game. I'm going to go Florida State 24-17.
Yeah. First of all, I think the line is correct. This is almost a pick 'em in my mind, because the things that strike me are Florida State's defense has been good, but their weak spot has been the run game, which now we have Louisville coming up. I mean, I was just looking currently. Florida State's, they're not terrible, but they're 45th in rushing defense. And on the other side, they're going to be dealing with Jawar Jordan, Isaac Orendo. Those two are two good running backs that have been able to step up when the other's having an off day. With a competent, we've talked about Jack Plummer. He's competent. He's a veteran. He's been there. He's taken the billion snaps from various teams. He knows how to help manage that offense. And if their defense can take advantage of Rodemaker, who showed some weak spots, I'm sure they're looking at that film very carefully on what Florida did. And just, let's not do it. Just as long as they don't do like dual targeting fouls. I mean, things like that. Don't spit at the opposing players. Things like that. Simple fixes and discipline. I think Louisville could pull this off. I'm leaning that Louisville gets the upset, but I feel, first of all, as the line shows, it's not much of an upset. But I just think Louisville right now, losing to Kentucky in the way they did, they want to come. They always seem to prove themselves because they had that Pitt game, and then they came out strong and just reminded everyone that, like, no, we are a solid team. I think Florida State has shown enough weakness, enough ways that Louisville can take advantage of them. But I acknowledge that in the same way Washington seems to be finding ways to win, so does Florida State. So it very well could be that Florida State pulls it off. I'm very pleased with the line because I think this would be a game that would end something along those lines, but I would go, I could see a 33-30 game with Louisville winning. I could see that.
Wow, you think points are coming?
I could see points coming. I could see both sides just getting desperate and it turns into a frantic fight. I could see that. Although I acknowledge that's typically not Louisville's MO. I think you're well, but I want to make some variety here. Let's see that game go that way. I also don't think Florida State will keep it a low scoring game, so it's going to force Louisville to have to keep scoring.
So just looking at the matchup right now, Parker Fleming, Stats of War on Twitter, puts out these great graphics that obviously really go deep into the numbers. His projected score, which again does not factor Jordan Travis being out, is 32-23. But the two stats to keep an eye on: Florida State has the number one defensive success rate against the pass. They hold opponents to only 34% successful plays on passing attempts, which is astonishing. Like, that's really, really good. On the other side, Florida State has the 88th rushing success rates offensively, which is a little bit of a surprise. I mean, Trey Benson has obviously done a really good job of grinding out tough yards, but again, this is down to down stuff, right? Like this is every single down. Can you rely on him? And the scary thing for me is if this game is fully in Tate Rodemaker's hands, I don't love that. I do not love that. I do think that Louisville will be able to hang on to the ball at a higher level. And Florida State is still 33rd in defensive rushing success rate, which is pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. But Louisville is top 15 in both passing and rushing offensive success rates. So maybe they're just going to be able to, again, make the game easy for themselves, make it hard for Florida State, muck it up for them, play ball control. I do think, though, that success for Louisville looks like a lower scoring game. I don't think that it's going to get into the 30s if Louisville wins this game.
Well, next, we'll go ahead and take a look at the SEC and Big 12.
The College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line.
So looking at the SEC title game, this is the one that we've all been waiting for, Georgia and Alabama. It's a really promising matchup. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a huge game, obviously. Georgia, 6-point favorites against Alabama, but both of these teams have looked like two of the four best teams in the country over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, Alabama needed a little bit of a moment to survive that 4th and 31 against Auburn, but it's a rivalry game. It's the Iron Bowl. Things happen in those kinds of games. And also, Auburn literally hired their coach because he beats Alabama. That's the only reason that they hired him. When I look at this game, I think that Georgia is just a little bit more down to down consistent. That's what I like about where they're at right now. But I mean, again, I think that Alabama might have the more dynamic component to their game when it comes to Jalen Milroe in the starting lineup. Over the past couple of weeks, he has been a trump card in a lot of ways. Passing wise, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, but rushing wise, he's obviously been a monster. And he's made enough big plays to really set things up in a nice way. And on the other end, I think that the matchup that will really decide this game, again, going back to Parker's previews, it's going to be Alabama's pass defense versus Georgia's pass offense. Georgia has been okay running the ball this year. They're not very explosive, but they're pretty good down to down. On the other end, I mean, with Alabama, they're number 7 nationally in defensive success rate allowed against the pass. And they're going to be a tough test for Carson Beck, who, by the way, didn't have a great game last week against Georgia Tech. Now, again, rivalry game, weirdness, and also, Georgia Tech just has it out for ranked teams. That's just kind of what happens. But only 175 yards, threw an interception in that game, was not his best. It ended up being a 31-23 game. So can Alabama, led by Kool-Aid McKinstry, led by some really good guys in the secondary and at safety, can they make things hard? And the other part of this too, Georgia, a couple weeks ago got Amarius Mims back on the offensive line, probably their best overall offensive lineman. But Dallas Turner's a better player coming off the edge than anybody that Georgia's really had to face so far this year. Can they make his life difficult? And how does Carson Beck respond under pressure?
Absolutely. And I think, again, the Georgia Tech game, they were missing 3 of their top 5 receivers. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, Rara Thomas were out. Those 2 turnovers were critical. I think the interception by Carson Beck in the Georgia Tech red zone was something to keep an eye on. I'm sure Alabama is breaking that down completely. But also that Georgia defense is still good, though. They were able to keep Georgia Tech out of the red zone for quite a lot of the game and force them to settling in on field goals. But the weakness that Georgia showed was they still can be gashed by running game, so they need to get stronger on the edge. With Jalen Milroe, with the quality of Alabama's offense, I think they could exploit that. But in the end, maybe I'm leaning in on the fact that they're going for win number 30 in their streak. I think Georgia will take this game. It'll be, again, I expect another close one here. I would be shocked at anything less than a couple of points differential. I think the 6 points it was 6 points, right? Seems a little bit high.
Yeah.
I want to keep us moving here. What do you think finally with this Big 12 title game? Texas has to prove itself. Texas feels awkward right now because I think they're starting to get this growing sensation that they are going to be left behind if it's a pick between only one spot and one lost teams. Even though they beat Alabama early in the season, it seems a lot of momentum has been moving towards, Texas, it's nice, but that's why you're leaving the Big 12. What are your thoughts?
No, it's a great question. And I think that it's a complicated question for Texas because, like you said, they have arguably the best win in the country, a win on the road against literal Alabama. And Alabama at the time maybe didn't look as good as we thought. Well, they've come into form, right? They look like a top 5 team in the country right now. And maybe people will make the case, well, but they weren't that then, but they are now. To me, that doesn't matter. You went on the road and you beat Alabama. I don't think that we can try to parse too much who is what when. Like it just gets too complicated that way. I think this is a terrible matchup for Oklahoma State. Like Oklahoma State is a good team, but this is exactly the kind of matchup that you don't want because it puts Oklahoma State's really good running game against a Texas defensive line that might have the best defensive tackle interior in the entire country. Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy II. I don't know if Oklahoma State can win that. Now, against Oklahoma, they came out with a really, really smart, really strong game plan. They immediately swung the ball outside. They made Oklahoma sit back on its heels. It really had to make them restructure what they were doing at safety and linebacker. And then Ollie Gordon went crazy for Oklahoma State. I do think that this Texas secondary is not special. I don't think that it's as good as the front is. But the issue is, I don't think that Texas has to adjust to stop the pass. I think that they can come out there ready to stop the pass and stop the run with their really good defensive line. So I don't know. It's really difficult, I think, to try to. I think it's really difficult to try to figure all this out. To me, Texas should run away with this game. I think that they should easily cover a 14.5 point line. I think that it's probably going to end up being something like 35-17, something like that. But the other thing that I'll mention is that Oklahoma State has been a different team when it sort of overtly cares about games versus when they don't. We saw that early in the year. They kind of threw their non-conference to the dogs in a lot of ways. And then when it was time to get up for Oklahoma, they completely outplayed them. So I do think that Oklahoma State will have a little something ready, but I just think that Texas, their entire Sarkisian tenure has been leading up to this moment. Texas has not won a conference championship since 2009. They haven't played for a conference championship since 2018. They are clearly far and away the best team in the Big 12 this year. I don't even think it's close. I think that on paper, they should blow away everybody on the field. They lost a close rivalry game. I don't think that changes how I feel about this team. And I think that Texas should be able to come out, win a big game. And if they're able to do that, like you said, maybe it gets a little squirrely with Florida State, Alabama, and Texas fighting for those late spots. But man, I think Texas should have a really good case.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm curious to see if this game gets out of hand. We'll start to see Arch Manning more because that certainly got the Texas faithful fired up. But I see some interesting motivations here. I could see Texas still trying to send a message, not only to the playoff committee, because watching that beat down 57-7 on Texas Tech, it felt like an old school BCS style points beating where you're trying to impress the computers back in those days. It felt like a throwback to there, but instead it was a message for Brett Yormark. And again, I could see them absolutely wanting to devastate. Like it was a movie. Here is your supposed champion looking down at the broken body of Oklahoma State. But Mike Gundy is such a wild card this season that I could see unexpectedly coming loose. But you're absolutely right. That defensive run game by Texas is just so awe-inspiring with the quality of talent that as much as Oklahoma State has seen such a renaissance with a running game, I can't see that getting past them. So the other 1 weak spot I will point out, though, is Texas still had, and it was buried by their long touchdowns. They had some trouble with red zone offense. They only were able to score one touchdown on their first 5 trips. If Oklahoma State can keep it ornery like that, I could see that certainly. Turning into a close enough game, but I think I'm willing to take Texas on that kind of a win. Going to go ahead and slowly wrap this up here. One of the things that I wanted to just throw out there, one of kind of funny stories, we talk about playoff decisions. I follow all kinds of wacky college football. Japan they have college football. They have over 100 teams there. They had one of the weirdest playoff decisions I've ever seen in the Kansai Collegiate American Football League. So bear with me here, one of their 2 big conferences. They had a 3-way tie for 6-1, and the way they solved it was something I have never seen before. The Kansai Kaisers had just upset the 5-time national champions, the Kwansai Gaikun Fighters, 16-13. Immediately after the game, in their uniforms, with a representative of the 3rd team on the field, they all played rock, paper, scissors. And then the winner of rock, paper, scissors picked up a sealed envelope. All 3 players then picked sealed envelopes. And when they pulled the paper out, it said who went to the playoff. So we watched the team that just lost, Kwansai Gaikun Fighters, pull up a paper that said they were going to the playoff. And you see, there's a great photo of these three team captains. One guy's like in regular clothes because he was just there like the Ritsumikan guy. But the other guy, the guy who just won a major upset, looks like he just got shot. Like you could tell the pain of holding up. So that's how they solved their particular playoff conundrum. But I thought I'd throw that out there. It's kind of a wacky one. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here. I just wanted to thank all of you who listen to us. I mean, and listen to our thoughts on all of this stuff. We value you. We value your opinions. We value your votes in our poll on X, Twitter, at CFB Survivor Show. Be sure when you get a chance to like, rate, subscribe whenever you get your podcast. I wanted to thank our producer, Joey Aliberti. I'm Bobak Hayeri. He's Shehan Jayaraja. You can find his work at cbssports.com. See y'all later.
The College Football Survivor Show, where playoff survival is always on the line.